All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to this NC Bold Ambassador presentation. I am very excited to be sharing with you all the information that I have prepared for you today. My name is Casey Berggren, and the title of our presentation is The Game Changer, Gamifying the PBL Classroom. There is a link provided for you and also a QR code, so no matter where you are joining our video session of this presentation today, from a desktop or a mobile device, you should be able to access them with that information. There are some special instructions because this is a pre-recorded version of a presentation that would typically be done in person with some real-life gamification happening. So the in-person version of this session includes activities with online gaming websites such as Blockit, quizzes, and Gimkit. However, since this is a pre-recorded version of the presentation, a few modifications have been made. Thus, throughout the presentation, there will be times where, if we were meeting in person, we would pause to play a game together as a group to review the content we just covered. So the group, if they were attending this session live, they would know that it was game time with this sound. However, for video participants, that simply means that we are transitioning from one section of the agenda to the next. We will review today's agenda in just a moment. But first, again, my name is Casey Berggren. Here is how you can reach me either through email or LinkedIn if you would like to keep in touch after this session. And I just want to thank everyone for attending, and I hope that you will reach out and please keep in touch. Give me some feedback. Let me know how you are using gamification and or project-based learning in your classroom. I would be very excited to hear from you. Our objective for today's presentation: by the end of this lesson, participants will be able to make connections between the synergies of gamification and project-based learning to transform the learning experience by immersing students into a gamified environment full of engagement and hands-on learning. We're going to begin our session with a quote, an empowering quote that states, "Changing the game of school means actually allowing students to create their own game. This is empowerment." And here's our agenda for today that I previously mentioned. There are 6 sessions of today's presentation. If you are interacting with the presentation slideshow on your device, you are able to click on each one of these chapters or sections and go directly to there. Our first section is going to be Level Up. Let's get started. Let's get started with our first section for today, titled Level Up. We will cover a lot of content in the beginning, and then you will notice that as we get through each section, they will go quicker and quicker with more frequent breaks. But for now, let's get started. We will begin this section with a quote from George Couros of The Innovator's Mindset. "If we only teach students the curriculum, we have failed them." So the point of gamification and project-based learning is to put students in the driver's seat of their learning and also provide them with real-world scenarios so that they are prepared to think critically and problem solve when they are ready to go out into the real world. There are a bunch of resources that I have made for you that are linked in the button labeled Shared Folder. You are welcome to explore those resources as they are linked throughout the presentation today. You can view them all and make copies, and I hope that you are able to use them and make them your own, to use them for your own instruction. While conducting research for this presentation, I found a study that I really liked. It was called The Gamification of Learning, and it was published in November of 2020. It is linked at the bottom of this slide, and the authors are Saylor and Homner. And what they found is that by identifying 3 learning outcomes, cognitive, motivational, and behavioral, they were able to study how gamification affected students in the classrooms. So they broke down the 3 learning outcomes and defined them as follows. For cognitive, it's broken down into 2 parts, conceptual and application-oriented. So conceptual learning, what do students know? What are the concepts and facts that they can share back with you? For application learning, what procedures and strategies do they employ in order to solve a problem? For the motivational learning outcomes, this applies to their intrinsic motivation, their preferences, their feelings, their attitudes, anything that they are coming to you with from their homes and their communities. Anything that affects the way that the child thinks and feels would be part of the motivational learning outcome. And I know that the majority of us as educators, when we think about behavioral learning outcomes, we think about classroom behavior, but that's not the case in this study. Behavioral learning outcomes, as defined by Saylor and Homner, refer to what the students are able to do, their technical and motor skills. So are they able to solve the math problem? Are they able to build the robot following instructions? That's the behavioral learning outcome, not how they act in the classroom. The definitions of these learning outcomes will become more clear and applicable as we move on to the next slide. So with the learning outcomes defined on the previous slide, we have them in this new infographic that explains the synergies between a gamification and project-based learning when it comes to those 3 learning outcomes. And again, the study, the gamification of learning, is linked at the bottom, along with the New Tech Network learning outcomes, which are the inspiration behind the far right column labeled PBL terminology. So let's take a look at how all of this combines into one synergy between gamification and project-based learning. When thinking about the learning outcomes, if you were an observer walking into a gamified classroom, some of the actions that you might see taking place would be in the middle column. So under behavioral, you might see students and the teacher using leaderboards and avatars to track their progress. You would see social interaction and friendly competition between students and between teams. You would see problem solving and collaboration, constructive competition or gameplay, and you might even see a badge system in place to keep students motivated. When you translate these actions into project-based learning terminology, that's where the far right column comes into play. So using things like leaderboards, avatars, relating it to students, building their confidence and social interaction would translate to their ownership of learning, their personal relevance to what it is you're teaching, and the real-world applicability. It may also impact their growth mindset and abilities to build relationships with each other. With regard to knowledge and applications, for examples in action for cognitive, that might translate to project-based learning speech with research and problem solving, oral and written communication, and groups or teams. And for motivational, the use of our badge system to encourage students to remain engaged would hopefully impact their confidence, their willingness to seek out challenges and feedback, and thus improve their work ethic and their growth mindset. So let's take a look at a more specific example that I really like in the cognitive section. The authors of the Gamification of Learning talk about game fiction, which is placing students into a hypothetical fictional world or scenario where they have a major problem to solve or a big boss to beat. That is pretty much the exact same thing in project-based learning speak as an anchor document or a driving question, also known as beginning with the end in mind. So think about how when you begin writing a lesson plan, your ultimate goal is to determine what you want your students to know and be able to do as a result of that lesson plan. When you think about it like that in project-based learning, that's your driving question, your end goal, your final product, your big problem to solve. And then you place the students into a hypothetical situation that makes them feel like they are a part of something really big. Well, that is game fiction. I hope that you are able to use some of the examples in this synergy. Summarizing what we've just covered, gamification and project-based learning are synonymous in some of the following ways, and this is not inclusive of all the ways. These are just a few examples, such as game fiction, that can be an anchor document or beginning with the end in mind. Students receive immediate feedback in the forms of rubrics, checklists, getting feedback from their peers, or constructive competition or gaming with each other amongst teammates and from team to team. Scaffolding learning activities that increase in difficulty as time goes on. So when you think about these activities, maybe think about how when you play a video game and you level up, each level gets slightly harder than the previous one until you get to the big boss that you have to beat. Scaffolding activities are the same way. They are also a great way for teachers to assess what students are able to do after being taught and what they need to be retaught or how they need to be challenged moving forward. Scaffolding is a popular part of project-based learning. You have a leveling up and progress monitoring with those scaffolding documents, with those scaffolding activities, with badges, leaderboards, and avatars. And of course, the social interaction piece, because students are more influential of each other and their peers. And that puts the control over learning back into their hands. On the previous slide, we talked about progress monitoring of student learning via badges and leaderboards. Let's talk a little bit about how to create those leaderboards. In fact, Google products are a great resource for creating leaderboards for your classroom that are colorful and easy to follow. I recommend considering Google products such as Sheets, Slides, Docs, and Drawing. There are a couple of examples of leaderboards in the shared folder, and a couple of them are linked here, including one that was created with Docs and one that was created with Sheets. What you see over to the right is an activity that we would do if we were in person, where participants would choose an emoji for their avatar to use for a leaderboard that we would then use throughout the duration of our presentation today. But for the sake of time, we aren't going to choose avatars. We are, however, going to move on and talk about avatars and badge systems. To create avatars to use in your classroom, I recommend a couple of strategies. There are a few free icon libraries that I absolutely love and recommend. One of them is Flaticon, and the other is the Noun Project. They are linked on this slide, and if you haven't checked them out, I strongly encourage you to do so because their libraries are vast. If you don't want to use Flaticon or the Noun Project, you can also do a Google image search, but be cognizant of copyright infringement laws. And to avoid that, you can click on Tools, Usage Rights, and then select Creative Commons licenses if you are searching in images through Google. That will help you avoid any copyright infringement. For badge systems, you have probably heard of either one or both, either Classcraft or ClassDojo. Both systems are phenomenal badge systems used in schools across the country. I've even seen high school students be very engaged with ClassDojo. But if you don't want to have to pay for a service, you can create your own avatars using a resource on the next slide or using some of the free icons mentioned on this slide. So speaking of creating avatars, another way to do so is with pixel art. Pixel art is very popular, even though it is still considered 2D art. You would use Google Sheets, and it is a bit time consuming, but it is worthy of your consideration if you would like your students to be able to create their own avatars instead of finding something on the internet. Creating pixel art using Google Sheets is a professional development all by itself, much like learning how to use ClassDojo or Classcraft. So we won't spend a whole lot of time talking about it, but there is a resource linked for you to use. And it also shows you how pixel art activities can be embedded across curricula. So do check them out if you want a fresh resource on how to teach math or even biology. At this point in time, our participants would pause and play a game using Blockit. We have now reached section 2 of our presentation for today, and this section is called Coin. You can think of this one as the shopping list area. To begin, I just want to remind you there is a link to our shared folder of resources. So the things that are shared in this section are available there for you to use. And we're going to begin this section with a quote that I find very important because not everything that we do in gamification and/or project-based learning has to involve technology. In fact, a lot of times we can enhance our instruction by providing things that are tangible for our students to play with and manipulate. So a quote from Janelle Burley Hoffman, author of iRules, states, "Tech play is convenient, fun, and sophisticated, but we must keep with the traditions of board games, jigsaw puzzles, card, and dice games." And you'll see how this applies very soon. If you are looking to gamify your classroom, you should know that it takes a while to adapt to your classroom. It does not happen overnight, and it does not have to be super expensive. So you can start gamifying your classroom today on the cheap and over time. The saying, "It's a marathon, not a sprint," applies to this transformation. Your students might even be willing to donate to your cause. And here are some examples listed out on this slide of how to begin gamifying your classroom without breaking the bank. Here is a shopping list of some example items you might want to consider while gamifying your classroom. Things like miscellaneous board games and puzzle pieces, or small jigsaw puzzles, even Happy Meal toys, and other miscellaneous tangibles, fidget tools, missing cards, things that you can find at garage sales, junk shops, thrift stores, you name it. It doesn't have to be a very expensive, complete, elaborate kit in order for you to start using it with your students right away. You can find miscellaneous items pretty much anywhere and on the cheap. This is an example that I saw on the Food Network called a punch box. So once you have some of your items, whether they are toys from Happy Meals or they are random pieces from board games like Sorry or Monopoly, you could place those characters or those items or whatever it would be into a box where you cut out some holes and you go around the room and have students punch a hole to find what tool they need to use to incorporate into their project or into their game. So it might be a character, it might be an item like putty that they have to use or incorporate into their project in some kind of creative way. So an example that I did with my students here, I didn't use the punch box, although I think that's very fun. I had shoe boxes instead, and I had 6 shoe boxes and 6 groups of students, and each group of students got a shoe box, and inside the shoe box, of course, I had it decorated and made it look pretty, kind of like a treasure box. They would open it and they would have 6 items in there, and they had to incorporate 6 items into a story that they had to collaboratively write, or they had to incorporate those 6 items into a board game that they had to collaboratively make that taught a certain topic for the unit for the month. So you can get very creative with this punch box idea. The website is linked down below, so you can see how they used it on the Food Network. They used it for snacks at parties. But I would use it more as a creative way to assign students prompts. There are all kinds of ideas you could have with this, and if you choose not to use the punch box, shoe boxes are also great too, and pretty much everyone has at least one shoe box they could donate from their closet. At this time, my participants would pause and we would play a game using Blockit. We have now reached section 3 of our presentation, which is called Listserv. This section provides you some additional resources which are linked in each slide for you to go and explore on your own time and determine which ones fit for your personalized gamified classroom and which ones you might want to pass on, and that is totally okay. The first item I want to share with you is a gamification quick ideas document. This is a one-pager with about 6 or 7 ideas on how to quickly gamify your classroom if you are just getting started out. More examples are being added to this document over time, so definitely check back later. Regarding personalization and ownership of learning, which we now understand is happening a lot in a gamified and/or project-based learning classroom. Students will contribute to the leaderboard, racing across to the finish line to earn the most XP by the end of your project or your quarter or your semester, your course, however you want to run that leaderboard. If you want some examples of student rewards to continue their extrinsic motivation and involvement with the leaderboard, you can click on the link, and the preview of student rewards is down at the bottom right of this slide. But definitely check that out because it is like a checkbox document. Students may create their own avatar using Bitmoji, pixel art, which does require a separate professional development if you haven't explored creating pixel art with Google Sheets already, and that is linked previously in this show, or a character from their favorite game. Students may also choose their headshot or an avatar, but they must use their real name and use school-appropriate imagery. They may not change their image once it's done to avoid confusion, so be sure it's something they want to use through the duration of your project, quarter, semester, course, etc. Possible reasons for varied cognitive learning outcomes of students include their varying learning styles or personalities, individual situations and backgrounds that they're coming to you with, responses to gamification in general, because it may not be for everyone, contextual and/or situational circumstances, and just other general motivational factors, intrinsic versus extrinsic, for example. Just something to keep in mind. As I like to tell everyone that I talk to about gamification and project-based learning, these are resources. They're not the curriculum. They're not the be-all, end-all to instruction. They are forms of intervention. So it's a tool to have in your teacher toolbox. That's all this is. So in summary, gamification and project-based learning are an intervention, a differentiated approach to teaching and learning. They are not the curriculum. They do not replace content or the need for best teaching practices as they pertain to your own particular student body. Wheel of Names is a resource that I like to use as bell ringers or tickets out the door. You can generate quick forms of calling on students at random or prompts for students to be randomly assigned to work on in their groups or in their teams. There are some resources on this slide linked to how Wheel of Names can come in very handy in your gamified classroom. And I'd love to know more ways of how you have used Wheel of Names creatively in your gamified classroom. So please do keep in touch if you come up with something genius, because I very well might add it to this presentation to use for future participants. Okay, we have come to the point where our participants would pause and go ahead and participate in a game via quizzes. This section, titled Gain XP, is probably one of my favorites because it contains some of my favorite digital resources that I am excited to share with you today. First up is Wordle. I'm sure everyone has heard of Wordle by now, but in case you haven't, custom Wordle is also a thing. So having students customize and share their own custom Wordles to practice or review key terms, vocabulary, or other important concepts helps build upon their collaboration and communication skills. So you can have your students create a custom Wordle and challenge each other to solve it as a bell ringer, an icebreaker, or a ticket out the door. If you haven't checked out custom Wordle, it's very easy to use, requires no prior training, and is a quick, easy resource for you to use while gamifying your classroom. One of my favorite new apps is the Amaru app. Amaru is a cat dragon. He is a virtual pet that you take care of on your phone. And when you first meet Amaru, he is very anxious and very shy around people. So you have to pet him. You also have to feed him and interact with him in order to build his confidence and his comfort level around people. You also can send Amaru on little journeys during which he will find little prizes that he will bring back to you. But when you send Amaru on a journey, you are supposed to take a screen break. So Amaru is a very good resource for teaching students self-care and mindfulness. There are also brain break games and guided meditation within the app. And when you think about Amaru, think about those Tamagotchis and Gigapets that were really popular in the 90s, only the graphics are way cooler and the sound effects are awesome and everything is built right into the app that you need. Definitely check out Amaru if you like taking care of virtual pets and this speaks to your nostalgic bone. Digital escape rooms. These became really popular in 2020 when folks were trying to figure out creative ways to provide virtual instruction. If you have not yet explored digital escape rooms, just like pixel art, it is a professional development all on its own, but you can get started by clicking on the Digital Escape Room Choice Board link to the right. There are a few activities built in here, but digital escape rooms are a lot of fun to have students work in groups or teams to solve puzzles, riddles, or equations to save the day. They can easily be made with Google Forms, and there are some resources linked here to help you easily implement some pre-made digital escape rooms in your classroom. At this point, my live participants would take a break from absorbing information and play a game using Gimkit. Section 5 of the presentation is called Hit Go because it has a list of resources that you can click on and see gamification and project-based learning in real action. Before we look at those resources, let's begin with a quote. When students see course content in action, they become more engaged and excited to learn about it. From Bethany J. Petty of Illuminate. You will see why this quote is very applicable to this section in just a moment. So for project evidence, we've shared a few resources with you. The first one is a link to the Quest to Learn School, which is in New York. And this school has developed curricula for middle through high schools that is entirely gamified. And if you take a look at their website and their descriptions of curriculum, and you are familiar with project-based learning terminology, you will see that their gamified school has made several references to PBL speak without explicitly stating that they are a project-based learning school. Definitely check out this school for what they have going on and for some really cool examples on gamification throughout a school. The PBL game boards is an example project-based learning activity that I did with students many years ago to teach them expository writing. My students had to create board games and write out the instructions for how to successfully play the games and have their peers play the games in order to determine how strong their expository writing skills had become over the course of several scaffolding activities. The virtual reality headsets is a project that a colleague of mine did, where students got immersed into a real-world scenario using Google Street View and ThingLink. And you can see some photos of the students enjoying the end results of their projects at this link. I've also put together some sample gamification curricula for you to explore, so you don't have to start from scratch. And these resources are useful in math, social studies, science, and English for middle through high school levels. So take a look at those on how to further help you get started. There is also a link to my website. As an instructional technology facilitator, I am building a page on digital instruction in gamification that I highly recommend you check out, and more resources will be added to it soon. At this time, our participants would pause, not to necessarily play a game, but to participate in an activity that allows them to collaborate and communicate with their peers. We have finally reached the last section of today's presentation. This is section 6 called Developer Credits, where I would just quickly like to share with you the resources that were informational and inspirational behind today's presentation. There are no games in this section. The first 2 slides are helpful links. You can click on any of these links to read more information behind gamification and or project-based learning. They are alphabetized, so they are easy for you to access. The next 2 slides are some nonfiction resources. These mainly came from books, but also published articles that are also linked if they are available online. And last is a slide of some fiction resources, because I'm sure, like all of you, I am a lifelong learner and a reader, and I enjoy getting ideas for educational inspiration behind make-believe stories as well. These stories do come highly recommended. If you haven't checked them out, please do. I want to close today's session with the quote that inspired all of this from the very beginning. Changing the game of school means actually allowing students to create their own game. This is empowerment. And I want to thank everyone for attending today's presentation. Whether you are virtual or in person, I appreciate you, and I hope you will use the slide of information that I provided at the beginning to keep in touch and let me know how you are incorporating gamification and project-based learning in your classroom. Take care and enjoy your other sessions from the NC Bold Ambassadors.